according to my watch, it's 4:04 on January 15th and 14th, 13th. I'm pushing. I am
Don't get
pushing.
older before you have to.
I'm thinking in the next meeting, 13th, and it's the capital budget workshop. So Darren, I guess you're the one and only presenter. Well, we have the GMB team with us.
We do. So we've got Charlie's here to help answer. Charlie, Vince, and Josh, thank you guys for being there. Any questions you might have? I'm going to start off. I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's look real quick at just the budget itself. And all of you have had a chance to look at it. This is really a pretty, I believe it's a pretty good worksheet, interactive. We go from the water to water production, sewer, wastewater treatment plant, stormwater, electric, and then we're talking about, and then support. I also have in here a line where we can look at loans. And the biggest thing I think is that what we watch is when we go to the reserve fund projects is how this affects our reserves over the last 10 years. We have I'm going to kind of go bit by bit, and I hope that if there's a problem with sharing my screen, let me know, because I have a PowerPoint to help give some explanation as to what we're doing, kind of some of the decisions we're making. In the water, right off the bat, we have a couple of items that we're right in the middle of, and this is for fiscal year 2021. Does anybody have a hard time seeing my screen? If I were to increase it a little bit.
I can see it.
Me.
That's even better. Thank you.
That helps. Okay, so I'm gonna stay on the first 5 years. This is actually Tom Panetta's that he sent back with me. I've got some of his comments, but I want to take a look at. So first of all, Coleman, this is monies that we've already committed. This is the work that's happening with us in conjunction with the city. Coleman Avenue, that water line is being redone. And because of the contractor, we've been in there and replaced several sewer laterals, several water hookups already, frankly, simply because of the patheticness of the contractor. But we're working on that and we're staying on top of it. The next item is that I'd like to propose is that we have in here $100,000 for a water pipe assessment study. Now we've had discussions that we want to really, press has wanted to really compact a lot of the work that we can get rid of some of our old pipes. And with that, we need, I think we need to have, I need to hear all 5 voices of the board kind of come together so that we've got a path forward on how we want to do it. And that's why Press had said, let's do a 10-year. Let's look at what that effect's going to be specifically on the reserve fund. The other number that's really not movable right now is Pilot Town Road.
Darren,
Yes.
before we move off that, what would be the scope and the projected accomplishment of that study? What would it do?
Great. Let me see if I can switch over to this PowerPoint real quick and see if we can. Can everybody see this?
No.
Not yet.
Oh.
You got to go down and share that individual screen.
I'm going to stop and then see if I can reshare. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, am I in it?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Here's our project workshop. By the way, this is my oldest son's birthday today.
Oh,
He
happy
was born
birthday.
on Friday the 13th. So just know he's, anyways, we love him. Anyway.
How old is he, Darren?
He is now 33.
Wow.
33. And I'm really young. All right, here we go. Let me see if I can make this change. Here we go. I've got a couple maps for you. This is a map that shows some of the ages of the pipes that we've been talking about. We have on Pilot Town Road, we are in the process of taking some of the, we had an old 6-inch, 4-inch line in the road, parallel with an existing 10-inch ductile iron pipe. And we're now removing that. We are, abandoning all of the cast iron, abandoning all of the ductile iron that's in that road. If you look at this, we've got some older in the cedar that we're going to be talking about. That was put in around in the 50s, mid 50s. If we look at Kings Highway, it was an older one, put in the 30s and 40s. We also have Market, which is over on the beach side, which is old, put in the 40s and 30s. We have some other pipe that are out while it's in the beach. We really don't touch that, but we've got some old pipe in the ground. And so we're looking at,
Excuse, that pipe on the beach is still functioning? No, is it?
I don't believe so. I think
Oh,
most of that
okay.
has been abandoned as well.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, Darren.
Thank you, Charlie. The other thing that we need to talk about and make sure that we understand is this is a look at the dirty water calls we've been receiving. We have them that we've received. The yellow dots are in 2020, green, light green, 2019, red, 2018, 2017, and the blue ones we're just not perfectly certain on those dates. But in those 4 years, we've had about 23 dirty water calls. Now, one of the things I think Robert brought up, he said, you know, there's some people out there saying that they've complained about dirty water so often that they've quit calling. That's possible. But if we look at that, I don't know that we're getting a huge outcry for dirty water. Most of those end up in relation with both April and October, which happen to be the time when we're flushing hydrants. But these are calls that we've taken, we get them, we've been keeping them mapped, keeping them recorded. They're in all of our, on our NISC customer portal. We are, we're keeping track of them.
I don't see Kathy Tatman's on there.
Michigan, I think we are over here.
I think it's over here, isn't it?
It's the other, what's the other side of it? though?
Yeah, children.
Is it right there?
Right there, right there.
Not on the beach, yeah. Right,
Okay. We'll make sure hers gets in there.
all right.
She's on Michigan, isn't she?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's Michigan, right? Is it? I thought Michigan.
Michigan on Bay, but not on the beach.
So does her tap come off of Michigan or does it come off of Bay? Because Bay was replaced.
No, well, she lives now on Michigan, of course.
Right, but
I mean, on Bay. I'm sorry. She lives on Bay now.
but wasn't that whole line replaced when Bay Avenue was done?
Yeah.
So that's weird.
Yeah.
It might have come up Michigan. I don't know what the flow was at the time or where it was coming from, but it could have come up Michigan, I guess. 'Cause she's right around the corner.
The Bay Avenue line is all new.
Right, you're right.
Yep,
That
all
red
day.
dot from 2018 is likely me, by the way. And that issue was resolved when they put that unit over across the street at the pumping station. Haven't had a single problem since.
Very good. So what we're showing here is that, we've even had, so here's one that's all the way out in Wolf Run. And those pipes are nothing but new.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And we had one that was in the middle of Schofield. Again, we're not,
Yeah,
I don't know that I'm gonna go do a whole lot to try and prove, change or worry about the iron that's in there. But we're tracking the best we can calls for dirty water. But I don't think there's an overwhelming hit. You look over here on Rodney, and we know that Rodney's got issues. And frankly, it was Janice Pinto. We went in and we found out that her line was the problem. Let me go forward a little bit. We were really jumped on this because we wanted to get rid of lead. We'd gotten a testing error a couple of years ago on the lead, and that became a real impetus for us to go forward to try and get the lead out of the system. What happens is our water mains are not lead. They are either cast iron, ductile iron, or plastic PVC. But what happens is this gooseneck, our connection from the main into the water main is lead to the corp stop, and our meters, the majority, not all of them, our meter is right here at the property line. And then these lead lines and lead appliances that go into the homes, that's where that lead really comes from. We were trying to get some money from the state to help us get rid of that lead, to help us also in replacing some mains. And at that point in time, the federal government said, you can't, we're not doing that anymore. They wanted to concentrate on the private side of the line, and we don't want to get into touching private property. That is not, if there's somebody that has a home that's older than 1986, when that act came into to be, that's when they need to look at their own plumbing, etc. Down on Pilot Town Road, all of the lines that were connected to the old 6-inch and the old 4-inch cast iron, we're going to be taking and moving those to the new PVC, and they should be golden.
But
Go
Darren,
ahead, Josh.
excuse me, you said about the lead coming from the tap into the main. Do we know of any specific remaining houses? We know that there's more out there, but do we actually know of any that we haven't corrected?
We don't, we've got a guess possibly, but no, we do not know. If
Okay.
we do, our policy is that if we find one it is, we're going to replace it.
That's what I thought. Okay, you said it was there, and I just want to make sure I understood that.
Absolutely. No matter what, if it's there, we're gonna replace it. If we learn about it, it will be fixed. And so we do that now.
Thought there'd been discussion about the time, anytime there was serious renovation of a property that you were going to require a replacement of anything that was not PVC from the tap to into the home, rather than
Correct.
just, is that what?
Absolutely. So if we find out there's a lead, it's got to be replaced to the tap so that all lead is taken out of service.
But if it,
Yeah, some of the renovation that's been done, they just cut it off inside the foundation and replaced from there on, but it really needs to be replaced all the way out.
Yeah.
does that
So there's
apply to
some of it-
galvanized too, Darren? Does that apply to galvanized as well as lead?
I don't know that we have any galvanized services.
Okay, I thought that's what Leanne's problem was, at her daughter's house.
That's from the meter inside the house.
Yes,
That was the problem with Janice Pinto. We went up to the meter. What we had was clean. What she had was galvanized from her meter into her home. And that's
Right.
her responsibility.
but I thought the mayor just asked you if,
That's exactly what I was asking.
yeah, whether if we have there's a major renovation and they have a service going into their house, that we require them to replace it if they have a major renovation.
Part of that is that we don't inspect that.
Okay,
If it comes to our knowledge, we tell them that it's there, we let them know it's there, and it's up to them to replace it.
okay,
From the meter to the main,
yeah,
that's ours, and we will,
Yeah,
if
that's
we
yours.
find it on our side, we replace ours. We don't replace theirs. That's not our responsibility. That's private
but
property.
we just notify them, and then it's in their, okay.
Correct.
Not Robert, does Henry or Robin, do they do that as far as their certificate of occupancy in any way from the
Mayor?
city?
No,
But there is a separate plumbing inspection,
but that's done by the county.
right? Because is that a means of catching this?
That
We
should
have-
be a means of catching it, yes.
Yeah, well, we have our own plumber. That's if there's a change in the plumbing. If there's
Right.
if there is a plumbing permit pulled, then we do have it inspected.
Okay,
But the county,
Yeah.
as far as you know, don't require them to replace a galvanized or lead unless they.
I believe they do. This
Do
is
they?
part of the plumbing code that they do.
Yeah, galvanized too?
Yes.
Okay,
okay.
Well, matter of fact, yeah, because this would be something interesting to look at. The IRC gives a list of acceptable materials. Now, it grandfathers if you're not touching it. But lead is certainly not an authorized material, and I'm not sure that galvanized or ductile iron is allowed by the IRC either. And that's what the plumbing inspection is done to.
Charlie, do you know if that's the case?
I know that lead and galvanized aren't used anymore. Ductile, to my knowledge, is not used for a residential service from the main at all. It may be used for, say, a fire service or a larger commercial service,
Right.
but that's it. I will say this, lead water lines, water services, when you pull them out of the ground, they're as clean as a whistle. There's nothing on the inside of them. There's plenty of flow capacity. But of course, you have the inherent health issues related to those. But galvanized pipe is just the opposite. awful. It's always almost completely filled up on the interior diameter and a pinhole going through, which is very bad for people's pressures inside their homes. So I'll just throw that out there too.
Point of clarification. Did I hear somebody say that ductile iron is not permitted for water mains or only on service lines?
Ductile iron is permitted. It is not often used to serve a residential house, if at all. Ductile iron.
Right, I agree. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep.
And main, I'll show you a picture here. So so the difference is we're talking cast iron. This is a piece of 4-inch cast iron, but if you look at it, there's about a 1/2 inch of good solid steel that's in that pipe. So the other maps that we have, well, what we did is we have looked back for about the last 5 years for the number of main breaks that we've had. And in those 5 years, we've had about 5. And I'll tell you that that's a fantastic number. We had a big one on Market where a 6-inch cast iron pipe broke. We've had 2 of them that were ductile iron, both of them on kind of on Savannah and 3rd. Both of those were right next to some storm drains, and the temperature was in the 0 degrees back a couple of years at Christmas time, where the heave, I believe that the freezing ground is what broke it. And then we've had about 2 more. All the other, we've had corp stops go, etc. But these mains are incredibly strong. There's still a lot of iron there. And so we see the tuberculation and those issues, but those pipes are still pretty substantial. That's a cast iron. These are the oldest pipes that we have. And all it is iron on water. Ductile iron, this is a 6-inch ductile iron. You can see that there's a concrete cement lining in the middle. And this one, where it was pulled from, this is a beautiful pipe. Again, you've got a good 1/2 inch of steel on the outside. You've got the cement lining. That ductile iron is an exceptional, fantastic piece of pipe. And it's got many years. This one has many, many more years of life in it. This ductile iron pipe is still, it's highly regarded. And you take and look at the cost of ductile iron versus PVC, and they have exceptional life. They have exceptional strength. They provide quality water. These are wonderful pipe. If we look at a lot of times.
Hey, Darren, can I
Yes.
just interject? So when it comes to the pipes that we're looking to take out, I assume the ductile pipes are not pipes we're looking to take out. Is that correct?
Well, that's a great question. And that's what I'm gonna propose to you, is that instead of simply looking at the map where we know what the ages of these pipe are, we need to take a step back and let's look at what the quality of the pipes are.
Yeah.
And instead of just wholesale saying we're going to take and get rid of all the iron, let's make sure we're getting rid of those that need to be got rid of, but we're working with those that don't. And if there's some that might even use a relining or a regrouting or something to that effect, maybe that's a better way to do it. And so that's what I'm going to propose, is that we take maybe a 4 to 5 month break. Let's go through the system and start taking some
Coupons.
pothole shots
Yeah.
of what these pipes, where we're looking at ones we have concerns for, and let's make sure that we're being as efficient as we can, instead of, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, I guess.
So Darren, that was my question. That's the purpose of this proposed study, to identify the condition of the distribution mains, find those that are still serviceable, providing quality water, and what the get well plan is for those that don't, either replacement or lining if possible. And do you think that has the potential for saving substantial dollars over pulling out and replacing everything?
I do. Charlie, do you have anything you'd like to talk about there?
I think Mr. Kennedy's summary is pretty much what we're looking at doing. We would do the test fitting, pull sections of the pipe, of course, replace the pipe as we pull those sections to determine the condition of our existing pipes and to see where or where not we want to replace them.
Hey,
So the
Charlie?
numbers- The numbers that we've got in the plan as we have it in front of us today, does that assume a total replacement? Or are we leveraging technology and different things that aren't included in reducing those costs?
We're gonna look at, so I think there's absolutely, yes. We want to look at, for instance, there's a place over on Bay where we have a water main that goes almost parallel with the front door of it's way up inside the yards. And the cost of us having to go in and to redo landscaping, etc., I think would not be a good use. I think we've got only a few homes on there. And then if we did that in the winter time, where a few people were home, we could still, one of the expenses of doing a lining of a water main is that you still have to keep those people in water service. They can put that, a temporary service in fairly inexpensively, reline the pipe, get out of there, cheaper than it would be to replace and renew. But we've got to take a look at almost every project kind of with that lens to say, let's not, if we've got good pipe, let's not throw out the good. And
So the numbers that are in the plan, are they the worst case scenario and these things will advantage us and reduce the cost? Or is it assuming a certain cost advantage in with this different technology?
There's no technology costs in the proposed 10-year budget that I have.
So
These are all based on
cheaper than what we're seeing.
What's that?
It could be cheaper than what we're seeing.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So just so I can clarify as well, because I agree with Earl. The numbers we're looking at on the page, those are replacement numbers, right?
Yes, Charlie, is that correct?
Please say that again.
The numbers that we're looking on the capital budget that was sent to us. The question really is, are we looking at the cost for total replacement, or are we looking at the costs with your estimate of not total replacement?
It's total replacement for all the sections that are listed on your capital budget.
Okay,
Total
so
yeah.
if we do this study and we find it, like, let's just say 30% are better, then we can reduce those numbers by 30%.
Yeah, what the advantage of the study would be that it would indicate where you have pipe in good enough condition that you can extend its life and not replace it under this 10-year cycle.
Okay.
Charlie, do you have any feel for when cement lined ductile became generally into usage?
Yeah,
I wanted to guess back in the late 50s, early 60s, but do you know?
Yeah, I think it's probably in the 60s press. We probably do have some ductile iron that was put in before that that's not cement lined, and we would want to identify that as part of the study.
Yeah.
So I just pulled up the 2015 and 2018 IRC codes, and ductile iron is allowed for domestic services, but it has to be cement mortared. But the code does still allow for galvanized.
Jeez.
Believe it or not. I'm a little shocked at that. Everything else is PEX, PVC, PBS, copper. But that's somewhat distressing that those are still allowable materials for service lines.
I can't imagine any reputable plumber ever using it though.
Yeah, I could guarantee it. Nobody around here is doing that.
Right.
I mean, it's more expensive than to put the PEX or the et cetera.
Yeah.
And so far as the ductile iron, I don't know how small you can get a piece of ductile iron. Is there less than a 2-inch ductile iron pipe available?
I don't usually work with anything less than 4. I know that 3 is available, maybe 2.5, but I'd have to go back and look.
I think it's 2.5. Yeah.
But that's not something that, again, I don't think the plumbers run around putting ductile
No.
iron into anything.
No, they
No,
would.
I mean, the
Oh, they
labor
would.
cost would be astronomical compared to other service materials.
Yeah, PE.
I was
Absolutely.
just thinking relative to using the county inspector, the plumbing inspectors. We can't rely on the code because the code still says you can use it.
There you go. So back just talking about budget, one of the items I'll show you is that all the way here to the right, and I've taken several of these streets that I put together, the small streets that are coming between Cedar and Bay, and I put them in groups that I felt were fairly appropriate, that if you were a contractor, that you could put them into chunks all the way through Market, etc. And I've paced them out year after year. These over here would be going all the way into years 11 and perhaps 12, 13, if they went that far. And so that's where, again, I come to you as the board. If we have the desire that we push this all together and we're going to make this happen quickly, we do that. If we space it out, I think we can do it this way. And that's what I've shown here.
Darren, as you and I were talking earlier, there's about 6 streets there that are probably new enough that they're PVC. So that'd be about $750,000 out of that. Breakwater, Newport, and Mason, and Houston, Delmar, Milton, and Lewes and Rehoboth are all relatively new. They're probably all PVC, I would think.
Yeah, and if you take all, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those out of 823, roughly, they were some of them in the 17,000, 30,000, one of them 120. Those were very small dollar amounts, and that's also why I pushed them out 11 years. That those were not, they were not critical. They were not what I would consider essential.
But some of those in those same breakouts aren't as old. Newark, Clayton.
Correct.
They're
Just to clarify why those streets are included is that because we'd be replacing Cedar Avenue with PVC pipe, we would need to tie even streets like, Delmar that has PVC service all the way down its length. We would have to make its connection into the new PVC. So that's why those streets are on there, but they're really not like a street where you're replacing the entire length of it from iron pipe to PVC in terms of cost.
right.
So like Delmar, I think is only like $15,000, and that's basically just for the connection, the tie over of its PVC main to the new PVC main on Cedar Avenue.
Oh, so you've already taken that into account when you prepared.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's all in there already. Yep.
Okay, good.
Charlie did a very fine, refined look at these costs, and I think he's got it all in. And he
Great,
wanted to
okay.
make sure that he did a great job of making sure that we're not hiding anything. There's nothing that's not there that needs to be looked at.
I think that study is obviously important. What surprised me in some of the readings that I've had over the last couple of days, sadly, is that some of the older pipe last a lot longer. So if it's really old pipe, it typically lasts 120 years. If it was put in the 20s, it'll last 100 years. If it was put in the 40s, it'll last 75 years. Which kind of is upside down for me because I thought get the oldest out first. If possible, the oldest is better than some of the newer stuff, oddly enough.
And I think that's sort of what our data reflects, is that we're not having, huge main breaks. We're not having those issues. And so I think this $100,000, I think it's money that I think we've got to slow down a little bit, really look at that, and get a better plan based off of real data that's coming out of the ground.
Yeah.
Not just our mapping, we've got a good history. We've got good other information. And I think we've got to look. Now, that 100,000, we've got a couple things. We're hoping to Charlie's going to go and seek for a planning grant that we're hoping that will be make this a $50,000 bill for us instead of 100. Just so you know, we're going to go, and if you take and get one coupon, Vince, you can kind of address this. We're looking at taking a 2-foot chunk of pipe out of Kings Highway in 2 places. We're looking at taking a 2-foot piece of chunk out of Cedar in a couple places. We want to take a look at the line that's going down Henlopen Drive to SPI Pharma to the state park. We want to take a 2-foot piece of chunk out of there. Again, we just need that information, but you've got to put in your mind that we're going to be digging into a DelDOT road. You take that 2-foot piece of chunk out, you're going to be going 6 feet deep. There may be well pointing. And when you repair it, you've got to go all the way. We're going to end up going and repaving per DelDOT specifications to the straight stripe line, which each hole could be what, $8,000 to $9,000, Vince?
Yeah, and we've solicited some quotes on that, so we'll know better shortly.
Darren,
Yeah, that's my guess.
Darren, you mentioned SPI. How old is that pipe?
Charlie, do you remember when that was put in?
Yeah, that was put in the 50s.
Oh,
The mayor might remember this. I think the former mayor, Otis Smith, who ran Lewes Fish Products, pretty much where Cape Shores development is now, had that pipe run in to serve his business down there.
Oh, okay. All
That
right.
was circa the 50s. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Robert,
Darren.
do you remember?
Yeah, just to put a point on it, you said remove a 2-foot section. That's to inspect the interior of the pipe, I'm assuming. Is there any other non-destructive way, like radaring it, or that leave it in place and still give you some kind of a feel for what the interior condition of the pipe is?
Charlie or Vince, can you guys speak to that?
So, yeah, there is. I mean, you could do ultrasonic testing, and that'll tell you the thickness of the pipe, and you could compare that to the original thickness and have some idea of the rate of corrosion. The thing about that is the amount of effort to dig down and put that device has to literally be put right on the pipe. So once you go through all that and dig that hole, you might as well cut a section out of it at that point. That incremental cost for taking a piece of pipe out, or removing a section of pipe, is not that great, because you're still going to have the same effort involved in traffic control and backfill and paving, repair, etc.
Yeah,
Plus,
I got that.
there's no substitute for being able to look at that section of pipe.
Okay.
So no one makes a pig or that you can get into the lines?
Well, you can do that, but if you do that, you basically have to set up a temporary water system all for the length of line that you're going to be pigging, which ends up being cost ineffective.
Well, but if we're gonna cut into the line, we're gonna have to isolate it anyway.
Well, we're hoping that that's only going to be like just a few hours to remove the section and put the repair section back. So that's a few hours they would be shut down without water. But if you pig, that's going to be a day or so of water. Now you can pig without lining. You could pig without lining the water main, and that offers some improvement to the water quality. There, it really depends on how bad the tuberculation is. There's all different types of pigging. There's mechanical pigging for really bad stuff. There's ice pigging. You may have heard of that. And all those things offer improvement to the water quality, and would be that Darren showed that sample of that cast iron where, I mean, it seems like that section is mostly intact. The integrity is real good of that section, and haven't really lost a lot of metal there. But the interior has some tuberculation. You could pig that line, remove that, and get improvement to the water quality, without replacing the entire line.
Is it possible to snake a camera down there in any way and get more distance covered versus digging holes?
So, I mean, we talked, Darren and I talked about that, snaking the camera. We talked about that when we do this study. We considered that. The problem with that is when you run something up that water main, you're now contaminating that main in some way. And you just need to be very careful of that and sensitive to that.
By kind of knocking stuff loose kind of thing, or?
Yeah, and there's going to be some of that, but just contaminating the interior of the water main itself, you know?
Whenever you're introducing a foreign object, you have to go back through chlorinate, et cetera, timing. So, you know, the ice pigging, a couple of years ago, they actually did a demonstration where they invited all of the water suppliers there. And I think it was in Newark, I'm not certain. And what they do is they go to a fire hydrant and they just load that thing with a couple 100 pounds of ice. And then you let the water flow it through. And that's really good. It takes in all of that ice, those ice cubes just kick and rattle and they really knock stuff off. And they said it took them about a week and a half, 10 days to keep flushing and flushing and flushing to get that water back to where it should be. They said they would never do it again. So, I mean, there's upsides and downsides to all of those things.
I think the discussion is good because what you're hearing is that when we take those sections out from the mains to inspect them, we'll not only be looking at the interior of the pipe, the tuberculation that Darren showed on his photo, to get a sense of the water quality issues, but also it's important to remember that we're going to be looking at the outside of the pipe for its corrosion from the outside, which is a better indication of how close it is to failure in terms of water breaks. So there's two parts of the puzzle. There's the water quality and there's the longevity and its susceptibility to breakage.
Yeah, when I was referring to pigging, I meant to go in with a ultrasonic to be able to look at wall thickness and material condition. Not from a cleaning perspective.
Yeah, and Tom, we started out thinking about that and looking at that, but you know, that's something that probably is better suited for way more mileage of water pipe than what we're looking at in terms of the price. I don't think it's cost effective to do it, but the test pitting would be probably for our smaller system. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that 100,000 and I'd like to pull the trigger on that and move forward with that just as quick as we can. For this year, we're still committed for the Pilot Town Road abandonment. We're in that, we're moving forward. We're gonna make that happen. Over here, we had a couple questions, great questions from Tom. This one is, are these placeholders? So I've got the next 3 years. These are kind of fairly specific numbers, especially for this coming year and for the 23-24, and then it becomes placeholders. We feel like we've gotten things pretty caught up. Charlie, can you tell us which ones these city projects are? What have they got set up for the next couple of years?
Not yet. Probably a lot of you are aware that we've been revising and upgrading the city street inventory and maintenance schedule device. And I'm almost done with that, Mayor. You'll be glad to hear.
Very glad to hear that.
Yeah, probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks, I'll be able to meet with City Council. And what this new program does, it evaluates the existing condition, and through the program, it will show you what a 5-year program is, a 10-year program at different price levels, like $100,000 or $250,000 per year. Anyway, I haven't gotten there yet, Darren, so I don't know what the streets are. So I think those numbers right now probably can just be described best like what you said, placeholders.
Yeah.
Okay.
And make sure we're aware of when you're going to make that presentation, because we should be there.
Absolutely. One of the streets one of the streets that are on there would be Monroe and Railroad. What hasn't been done there, because Monroe from Railroad down to Kings Highway, and then Railroad from Monroe up to Adams has not been done.
And
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mayor. And those are really about the only sections of the street left in the city that need full rebuilds. You know, most of the other streets will fall into like a maintenance where we're milling and overlaying or some such, you know, approach like that. But that whole corridor that the mayor just talked about is a big project, and that would take some BPW participation.
So what is our participation there? Well, those are dollars out of our pocket. So what are we doing there?
I'd have to go back and look at my estimates, but I know like on Railroad Avenue, there's water main work the entire length. I don't think that's the case on Monroe. I have to double check that, but there might be some sewer work as well, Mr. Allen.
I think Monroe probably is, Charlie. I don't, but there's been no work done on that section of Monroe from Railroad down to Kings in a long time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just, it's slipping my mind. I should know that, but
Okay, no problem.
yeah, I can let you know, Mr. Owen, and through Darren.
Well, I know, I don't need to know exactly right now,
Yeah.
but in general, you're talking water pipe, sewer pipe, and all the work to go along with it. Is that generally it?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Okay, well, that's fine. Okay.
So those placeholders I'm comfortable with. This would be that 330 that we're doing on Coleman. That is the first year of the city project participation. So that number would be going right here if it wasn't already identified and committed. Cedar, we're looking at it. I pushed it out. The preparation and what we anticipated. Did this consider all of the tie-ins? I believe we do, that they're pretty much set, that are necessary for that work. And if you have any, and Charlie can answer that, but these I believe are good estimates that we could move forward with that. Again, what I have proposed here pushes that time out. I think what we need to do is go forward, especially with the study, and then we can come and revise this as needs be done. Let me go back to my PowerPoint just real quick.
Darren, Anne Marie's trying to join. If you could let her in.
I let her in.
Thank you. Yep, there she is. Thank you.
All right, can you see this? Is there a picture of a corpse stop with a big hole in it?
Not yet.
We just have the regular screenshot with all of us on it.
Try this one. You just have to hit 17 buttons and it's okay.
Yep.
How's that?
Yep.
You got it.
So this is what's fun. Right here, that little piece of metal, this is a stiffener. This is the corpse stop. This is what screws into the main. You take and drill a hole, you tap it, you then put these in place, and then you're off and running. This stiffener, that pipe has just a real microscopic vibration as the water goes through it. And this metal stiffener actually will cut through that pipe, and then that pipe gets a pinhole leak, and it starts to push the water out, and it swirls the sand, and it just eats that away. I always find that impressive. We have breaks like that still. We have it in our specs that we're not going to allow them to have any more of these stiffeners, but we're kind of aggravated that Schofield put them in. Let me see if I can get to the next one. Come on, here we go. Hdpe pipe. This is what we use mainly for our services going from the mains. It's a wonderful pipe. We don't have much of it in our system. We do have C900 PVC. This is water mains. This is what we're putting in the ground over on Pilot Town Road. It's a wonderful pipe. It's pretty much industry standard. And one of the things they've done lately is that they can do fusible PVC. And this is what we went under the canal from the dairy across to CH Mason's Way, under the canal. We're in good shape there. But anyways,
What's
that's
the
kind
life
of a,
expectancy of that, Darren?
say that again, Earl, please.
What's the life expectancy of that?
I think it's about 100 years, 75 to 100. Charlie, do you have an official number on that?
Well, it's new technology, but yeah, I mean, the PVC pipe part of it's probably got 75 to 100, going into it at least. It's just, it's fused together, so it's a little bit different than just regular PVC pipe, but I would still say 75 years minimum.
Charlie, is this more flexible than standard PVC?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but it's a little, one thing it's better for, Press, is that for directional drilling purposes, oftentimes contractors will install the HDPE, which ends up being a problem when we insert our corp stops for services. They tend to leak on the HDPE because they've got ridges on the outside of the pipe. And this fusible PVC is much better for that purpose.
Well, I'm going to show my age now. When PVC first became readily available, it was all fused, solvent welded pipe. And I remember one of the first applications we used it for was for a manufacturing facilities that had some very hot effluent, and the pipe would expand and crack because it was all, didn't have the bell and spigot that could give a little bit. And so I haven't used this type of stuff that you're talking about, but is that a problem? Have you seen that as being a problem?
PVC pipe actually has less thermal expansion and contraction than the HDPE. And I think a lot of the problems that the services are due somewhat to that thermal expansion.
Yeah, the PE is flexible and it can take.
It's less sensitive to thermal expansion and contraction than the HDPE.
Yeah, the HDPE is flexible though, and it can give a little bit. When PVC, at least the original stuff, was very rigid, and you would have pipe breaks. So I don't know if that's a problem with this stuff or not over long lengths. This was a force main that was probably 2 miles long, and it would expand and then crack because there was no give to it.
Just my thought with where we have it going under the canal. We keep a pretty consistent temperature. I don't know that we have much.
That's probably not a problem with this.
Yeah, I think I would feel pretty confident with this, where we've got it and where it's been used. But yeah, we'll watch that and we'll make sure.
The other benefit to the fusible PVC is that it's all iron pipe sizes, whereas the HDP has different sizes, and there's always a need for these special transition fittings when you go with HDP.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the water budget that you've seen? Any questions there, gentlemen? All right, I'm moving on to we can always go back. I'm not gonna, you can interrupt anytime. This is a picture of our well driller out on.
Darren, I'm sorry, one question before we do move on. The Rodney, the new road to Rodney Loop.
Yes.
I just had a question. We've got that out in year 2930. Is that dependent upon the development, that if the development goes in out there earlier?
Absolutely. Yes.
So that could potentially be moved.
That's a number that could be definitely slid on our time frame earlier. Do you anticipate, where would you guess, Mr. Planning Committee, that might hit?
Don't have the foggiest idea.
Amen. All right.
We've seen nothing.
All right. So really, truly, I'd love, if you ever have an inkling, or Mayor, if you have an idea, Mayor, do you have a guess or a thought of where that might land?
I don't right now.
So that, yes, that is a placeholder. I've put it out at the 10-year mark, but that could be moved up anytime. I would want to do that in coordination with the Rodney Fisher Cove development.
We'll let you know as soon as we hear anything.
You got it. You got it.
Right. So we will as well.
Thank you. So this is the well drilling. AC Schulte's out there. This is on Lynn Road. I've gotten some information back on number one, the supply. We're looking at a 500 to 600 gallon a minute well. They've sent in for information for the testing for the water quality, and we'll get more information and more direction there. But it currently what they're saying is that they feel pretty good about it at that 500 to 600 gallon a minute. And so I have some monies in the budget to help move that forward. So let's look at that real quick. Let me see if I can quickly get back to here.
That was on the Tower Hill property.
Yes.
Mhm.
So here's the facility. This is for the well development. And so that's all of that creation of the whole new. And then for the next afterwards, then we'll build the facility around it starting probably in April is what I anticipate doing. So that will be the engineering. I would possibly, this numbers may move up into the 21, 22. Yes, Robert?
What special circumstances are we facing with the enclosure around the well? I mean, does it have to conform to a certain architectural style, or is it industrial? What's the thoughts on that?
On the contract, I believe all it says is it's going to conform and not be an eyesore inside the building. Charlie and Vince, do you have any comments on that?
Say that again, Mr. Kennedy. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
You're very low.
Let me. This is going to be inside the Tower Hill development. Are we going to have to build the enclosure to resemble a residential structure? I've seen Tidewater do something like that in some of their production areas.
Yeah, our very preliminary look at this is to create a masonry building with decorative block and a nice roof on it that will blend into the development. I don't know that it would necessarily look like a house, but it would have some architectural component to it.
Why couldn't you make it look like a house, I guess? Or, at least,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess we could, but the nice thing about the masonry structures is because it is an industrial facility, it's good for washing down and keeping clean. And once you introduce like wood studs and siding, and you have water all around it, you start to run into problems over time.
well, you could use concrete block with, Hdpe Pipe applied to it or something, couldn't you? Well,
Yeah, we could. We could definitely look at all that. Yeah,
something like that.
I think the cost that Darren has in here will cover, pretty much whatever we want to do for that relatively small building.
Yeah.
We will be a good neighbor to him, but I'm still a cheapskate and want to be as efficient as possible. So I like the stronger, hose it down, easy maintenance.
Yeah, but with Hdpe Pipe, it's not a big thing, but there'll be no other masonry buildings in the community. That's the thing. I wouldn't.
Yeah. We'll take a look at it and we'll do the best we can there. So thank you. And frankly, your comments, what you're telling me is you want to make sure that it does fit in.
I think it should,
Okay, we'll do our best to make that happen.
One thing on that, Darren, just to keep in mind is their community facility will be directly adjacent to this well house, so we can maybe incorporate it into whatever they're doing as long as it's not too extravagant.
Sure. Excellent.
Yep.
But again, I think
Relatively small building anyway, won't it?
Yes.
So it could look like an accessory structure to the community center.
How about tankage for like at the existing well field? Obviously, you have these storage tanks there at the treatment plant. What are you going to do about? They're going to be put inside, or what? Have you thought that?
I personally see them as well, perhaps in a structure or something. Again, we don't want to just have the tanks outside.
Yeah.
I don't think they would want that.
No.
And so there'll be an enclosure or appropriate facades to make it blend in.
Sure.
Okay. Sewer is next. We've got a couple of things in here I want to show you. I'm going to go back to I'm going to share with you my PowerPoint. Here we go. One of the things that we're looking at is that we've got lots of manholes. We've learned how to take care of the sewer mains. So when I say that on Cedar, we went through and we videoed it, assessed it. We found the areas that needed to be fixed. Those were either repaired and or lined, and then we're going to take care of the manholes. On Pilot Town Road, we've already taken care of those, the mains that needed to be lined. They've taken, and we're going to be replacing the laterals with teal, but the manholes will be last. And one of the technologies that we have found that Charlie and Vince did a great job, and Josh did a great job of finding, we have some of our manholes that look pretty rough. The ones with brick, we've got some old ones. This is the corrosion and things with the cement corrosion comes from the hydrogen sulfide that's in the sewers. This is not one of our manholes. This is an example of the degradation though. We have some that are rough, but not quite this rough. What they do, it's a two-part operation. They go in and they spray a foam structure that goes onto the manhole, and it's about a 1/4 inch layer of plastic. Then they put on about an inch layer of foam, they trowel it, and then they put on another layer of the plastic. And what's cool is down here, I don't know if you can see, but there's an imprint of the date of when that job was done. And it's an exceptional process. This would be the last step. So if you look at the dates, this is the liner that we do with the sock. This is a fiberglass liner that goes through. And then they impregnate it and cook it. This is the liner itself. This is actually the same liner type. This is going into the marsh. This is the outfall from our wastewater treatment plant that we did a 1.5 years ago. And that this is what happens is this truck is got ice in it. They take and pull the liner using air pressure, and it drives it into the pipe. And it's kind of like a sock being turned inside out inside the pipe. And then they cook that bugger. Let's go back to the so here we have in the sewer, we've got manhole lining, and that's what these numbers are. This number comes at the end of the waterworks and the liner works for the sewer. So this piece will be the very, very, very last item to be done. And all of those manholes will be lined and secured that way. Most of these others, Pilot Town Road, service and lateral clean out replacement, we're putting it over the 2 years. Vehicle, cedar lining. This is also, we've taken videoed. We'll have some areas there that will be lined. It may be most of it. Nutrient trade, we still have that we do on an annual basis.
Just a question, Darren, it's just my newness here, but when I think about water, obviously clean water matters. When I think about the sewer system, it matters obviously, but the manhole covers, what does that do for us that would cause us to do it, this year and next versus, pushing it out further?
One of the problems, so we are probably, in my opinion, a little bit behind when we have I&I. I don't know that we have a lot of it coming through the manholes, but the brick manholes are definitely something that we've got to address. This is the best way to do it. We've had a few of them that we've replaced it entirely. Front Street, we did a couple. We've done them, as we've needed them. This is a technology that's going to save us from having to do that on many more. And so I think this is one of those that I think is very price reasonable. This is using technologies to the very best of our abilities. And I think we've really got to do it. When we videoed Cedar, we had a couple of those brick manholes where we've got bricks sitting in the bottom of the trough. And the only place they came from was from the manholes themselves. So
Yeah.
this is a timely, and we need to make these happen. This is after the cedar that will have it happen as well. We're keeping an eye on it, but this is a great technology. And I really recommend that we get that's something that we need to do.
Darren, am I correct that this only is going to be used to renovate the brick manholes or columns? And how many are they? And approximately where are they? In the older sections of the city?
Yes, we've got about 350 manholes, I believe. Charlie can answer that. Many of them have been in use for a long, long time. And this is very needed. Charlie, anything?
Yeah, I think the number is significantly above 400 now. But I think you were spot on with your discussion, Darren, that we would look at the ones that really are allowing infiltration into your sewage system, because where the payback is on that is you're not treating clean water down at the wastewater plant, and you have all that extra capacity. I think that's probably, this is me thinking out loud now, I think that's really a problem on the beach side, Cedar Avenue, et cetera, because they're so old and they're so close to the water table. Yeah.
And these numbers are based on linear foot. So what they do is, if you've got, we've got some manholes, the one up by Hazard, I think that manhole is almost 2 feet deep. We've got manholes that are down by Lift Station 4, which are 15 feet deep. And so what this has got done by a linear foot, you measure that, and that's how they charge you. And the price on that was very reasonable. Charlie or Vince or Josh, you have that on the top of your head?
They said, Josh just looked it up. Josh, it said like $267 per vertical foot, but GMB, I think we bumped that up a little bit.
Yeah, that didn't include traffic control.
Yeah, there was some things missing like traffic control. So I think we were around the $350, $400 per foot just for budgeting purposes.
But even then, that versus going in and replacing, et cetera, this is it's a fantastic technology, and I recommend it highly. 44, Tom Panetta, you asked, is this a placeholder? Yes, and that's about 4 years out, that we still want to be able to have monies in there for main replacement, that we can continue to do the videoing, checking for needs, and replacing and repairing. And I've become a real fan of the liner, that they do a great job. That's a good technology. Any other questions or comments on the sewer?
Does it come in any other color other than red?
I like pink, Tom.
It seems a little harsh. Sorry, just adding a little levity.
That Pepto-Bismol color doesn't let, nobody's going to be opening those for the fun of it. I'll tell you that.
Well, I think the historical commission needs to chime in.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Really.
Wastewater treatment plant. We do have we still have on the books a replacement of the PLC at the headworks, the main computer console. We've got a couple of sets just at the headworks where we have some old corrosion that's in there. It's still been doing fine, but we've got it on the books in case it's needed. That one is a kind of a wait and see. We may push that out. We may not need it. Our new operators have been doing very good, but I would like to have that on the books in case we need to pull the trigger on that.
One of the items, Darren, staying on the wastewater treatment facility, with our recent failures again on control and alarm systems, do we have, and maybe there's something GMBs can do, or monies to be able to do a control systems analysis for single failure and redundancy? I really think that that is something that is a risk going forward.
I bet that Charlie could probably pass that on to Chris Derbyshire. And then we could make that, at least get a quote on an estimate for that work and see if we can make that happen.
Okay.
Charlie, you okay with that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we would bring in a subcontractor that's an expert on that kind of control, motor control and other controls to assist us with that, but definitely we can do that.
Yeah, would, you know, looking for is an FMEA on the control systems and the alarming functions. Just since we had the very minor spill, was it this year or the end of last year? It was the end of last year again, due to the overflow.
Yeah.
I'm still a little concerned that we may not have covered it all.
Have we ever addressed the buildup of the fiber on the filters? Remember, we were going to put a filter in the recycle system to try to catch some of that. Has that ever been addressed? Are we looking at that still?
Yes, we are. There is a filter there, pumping that's right inside the building when you're coming off the oxidation ditches. I've given them instructions to make sure that's running. They said they would have it. They also had Suez, the filter manufacturer representatives were on site this last week, and they actually pulled some of the filters. And I have not gotten a report yet on what that is, but I plan on getting it. And so I think they've gotten a better handle on how they're managing those, and we'll see.
Yeah, I think we ought to watch that, because I don't know if it's still as bad as it was. I don't know why it would have changed, but evidently we had a lot of, that re-ragging on the filters that we should be addressing.
Yeah, when Darren and I walked the plant down in December, that's one of the things we talked to Infomart about, was getting that recycle filter.
Yeah.
And Darren, I'm working on a status update on the root cause report. So when you get the report from Suez, I'd like to see that.
Thank you. Yes.
And now, I assume now I haven't heard what the final figure is for the capacity of the new filters. I'm sure it's more than we originally designed it for, because I forget the percentage, but it went up like 10 or 15%, I think. But have we ever reevaluated the overall capacity of the plant? I mean, from all aspects. I mean, is it capable of producing on a regular basis a higher flow rate?
We would, again, I would ask.
Through the recycle and the aeration system. I'm sure the headwork probably has capacity.
I've had verbal discussions with both the operator and with Chris Derbyshire, and the filters themselves mathematically coming from Suez says that we are now able to do 1.63 MGD. So we have right close to about a 10% increase in capacity just because of the quality of the filters. We haven't increased the footprint there at all. The real bottleneck is actually at the drying beds. And now we've added 40% capacity there. And so with that, we're looking at, I would guess that the overall capacity has gone up. I'd probably, with what we're asking Charlie to do, I would ask Chris Derbyshire if he were to put pencil to paper and to find out what the real capacity is.
Yeah,
right now, I would still say, I'm going to tell anybody and everybody it's 1.5 MGD.
Sure.
But I know, so we've had several, couple rain events where for an extended period of time, over 24-hour period, they were doing 1.7 MGD and it was not blinking.
Yeah.
And so that, and the effluent quality was absolutely meeting every standard and blowing them out of the water. We've got a very good plan, and we've added capacity. And I know there's some people that don't want to hear that, but that's the truth.
Of course,
my understanding is that when we were handling the 1.7, we were also using the surge tank volume.
So what they've done, one of the things that they did from our previous operators, the previous operators were running, I believe, the surge tank from maybe 5 foot to 8 foot was their standard operation, right, which only gave them from 8 to the 12, only gave them a 3 foot freeboard or 4. what these guys have done is they brought it down where they're running from 2 foot to 5 foot, which gives them almost, you know, a
Yep.
7 foot freeboard. And with that, they handled that 1.7. Like I said, it didn't even come close to over. They said it operated beautifully. So
Of course, we had the 1.7, we had a lot of water. It was a diluted, you know, system to start with. So, but it'd be interesting to see what the actual rating would be if we reevaluate the whole plant for, you know, normal flow.
And I think that's, again, I think we would have to have an engineer take and give that
Yeah.
re-rating.
I'm
And
sure.
I think probably Chris Derbyshire could do that without much issue.
Okay, thanks.
So that'd be good.
Hey, Darren, there was a monitor or an alarm system that was going to go on one of the tanks. Was that last year's budget or is that this year's budget?
That was this year and already done, I believe. So that was going to be, if we're talking the same thing at the solids handling, at the thickener,
Yes.
they actually put a standalone high level alarm at that location, and it's got its own call out number. And so it's a standalone. Again, the monitoring there is beside the SCADA system, and it's another safeguard. So kind of helping out Tom's concerns with that.
Is there any other technology that we should be considering that other firms are using that can help us make sure that we continue to operate in a safe and efficient manner here?
So one of the things that the operators has shared is that they would like, right now, the SCADA system that they take home and can observe from, all it is a reporting system. They can't actually turn on, turn off pumps remotely. There's some people that will say that that's a disadvantage. I almost believe there's air gaps, which I call, you know, a safety air gap that says, I know that the Russians can't hack into this. I know that some 12-year-old kid from Silicon Valley can't hack in and turn on all the pumps and run this thing and change it. These guys are within 30 minutes. They should be able to come in, take care of business in a timely manner. I'm going to have to be convinced that they need to make that next step. I will, if, you know, again, I'm going to rely heavily on Charlie and some of the others to convince me that that's the right way to go. We will let this new operator has been there now for what, you know, since November. They're getting their feet wet, sometimes literally. And I think there's a little bit of growing pain. We've seen that, but also there's that learning curve. And I think that they're committed to doing a great job. And so I want to have an open house down at the wastewater treatment plant in the end of March. We're going to set up a tent. We're going to give people tours. Thank you to Earl and to Tom and all of you that have gotten people and said, hey, come and get a tour. And people have been impressed. There's people still that don't know what we have down there.
I would be very careful with that, with the COVID going on. I think that would be not a good time to plan. Maybe in the fall would be a better time.
Okay. But I just think, you know, people want to come and we can be socially distanced.
I'm all for it.
If it's safe, but I mean, we've got to get the word out. I think we've been beat up unfairly, immensely over what's happened for the last year. I think we're on top of it and we've got something to be proud of.
I agree, Dad. I just say, you know, if we delay it 6 months, hopefully it'll be a better time.
So just to, you know, on Earl's question about the extra alarm, and I know that the alarm is in with an automatic call out, but one of the items that was left in December when I was there was that was supposed to get wired into the SCADA system also. Do you know if it's gotten done, Darren?
I believe it has. Yeah, Touchstone is our integrator, and I believe they did.
Okay.
Let me check on. I'll check on that to verify. But I do know that they wanted a separate call out. So it may go to the SCADA, but I also know they have one separate from the SCADA, so it's standalone.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's wise this way. If there's any problem with the SCADA system, you still have that alarm call out. That goes back to the redundancy.
You got it. Yes, exactly. Okay.
Next thing I would ask is just continue. We all reserve the right to get smarter. if there's ways that we can leverage better technology that makes us safer and more secure from an environmental perspective, I think that's always an opportunity to have a conversation around costs. So just as you look at different things, I'd appreciate letting me know if you have anything that you think will.
Earl, this is Charlie. I just want to let you know that that plant with its membrane filtration and its membrane usage at the sludge handling facility is really technologically advanced, especially for a municipal facility.
Mhm.
And the wastewater effluent coming out of this plant, the suspended solids and the BOD loading are negligible, which is far better than most traditional plants. And this plant also has the ability, it already reduces the nitrogen and phosphorus that gets out into the canal tremendously, and it even has a greater capacity to do so by its operation. I do think some of the redundancy, alarming, SCADA, can be some improvements to that as time goes on with new technologies for sure.
And look, I do agree with that, with everything you've said. The only thing that I will continue to try to figure out is other firms have monitoring systems where they can be home and look at their computer and all the data comes up.
Yeah.
Other ones have one where they can actually turn things on and off. And I get what Darren's saying and others around security issues. I just think we need to continue to look at anything we can do to help us to make sure.
Okay.
And again, I think technically the plan is very well run and put together, but it's that monitoring system that I keep thinking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stay on top of that. And I've seldom have we prevented the wastewater operators from putting in alarms or things that they feel is better. So thank you very much. Stormwater. Couple items on there. Probably the biggest one is the MS4. This is a picture of us putting a lining in down in Pilot Town Village. This is the same technology, same group, Specialty Pipe Services, SPS. This is a 24-inch sleeve that they put in, and we've done it in a couple places. Again, we've got pipe that goes in between homes under people's property. And when it comes to that, the cost of doing all of the landscaping and replacement of trees, etc., with your taking and replacing a 24-inch diameter pipe is significant enough that we found it much better and wiser to put the lining where it's needed. And so we've been trying to be judicious with that. And so it's quite a technology. They do a great job, and we've been real happy with them. MS4, this is a new structure for MS4. There's all kinds of technologies that we might end up needing to establish. Tom Panetta, looking at the budget that I've proposed, I've got it out, I believe, 4 years, where we're starting with a couple $100,000, and the next year 300,000, and then it kind of drops back down. We don't know what we're going to be required to do with MS4. The whole idea is that it's cleaning up a big, huge problem, especially with fertilizers being put into the water system, soils. There's discussion. Sometimes you have to test at the outfalls into the canals. We have approximately 22 outfalls into the canal. And if we have to do something with each one of those outfalls, that's going to be a pricey start. If there's just a lot more questions of whether we're a phase 1 or a phase 2. We've got sea level rise. We've got all kinds of things that we've got coming at us. I just think we've got to have an idea that in the future, there could be a big dollar sign. And so that's why I've put that amount into the budget. I've left it out 4 years. It will probably, we'll just recognize that if they come in tomorrow and tell us we're in, that money could be moved up to this year or the next. It's an unknown, but we've got to recognize it's there.
And that gets us into the other side of the ledger, which is, how much we're charging for this today. And should we start charging more for it today, knowing that something is coming in the future as opposed to a big bang? It's not a very supported revenue stream, I'll just say it that way.
Future of MS4 is really unknown at this point. It's been done only in a couple communities or implemented only in a couple communities, and there's a lot of discussion yet going on. So,
And I know that Anne Marie has been on the call. I don't know if she's still there or not. But when she was in Dover, I know that Dover got hit with it, and it's quite a deal. It's not quick and easy. It can be rough. And again, it's the level that you get to put in. I know that the people down at the Inland Bays actually wrote a letter requesting that the BPW and everybody contributing to the canal be put into an MS4 program. So
So at the sea level rise workshop, we had DENREC speak on MS4.
right.
And, you know, they looked at where we were currently, the city BPW, and they felt we were in pretty good shape for the beginning phases of it. And that the key is that it's pollution at the source, not at the discharge. Now that could change in the future depending upon where the federal program goes. But at this point, it's pollution at the source and limiting that and making sure that your GIS is up to date for your stormwater management system. Now, I do agree with you that sea level rise is probably the bigger concern with our outfalls in the future years. So maybe we should retitle this as MS4/sea level rise, because we don't know where we are with our outfalls and the ability to, as sea level rises, to be able to discharge the stormwater system.
But this is Anne Marie. MS4 is really about the quality.
Correct.
So I think that they're separate issues that may have different fixes. For instance, MS4, there's a lot of monitoring you need to do. I know sometimes you can do, you know, some retrofit to improve quality, but the things that are going to address MS4 aren't necessarily going to be the same things that address how the pipes react to sea level rise.
Oh, I agree 100%, Mary. I was just saying that from a budgeting perspective, since we don't know where the monies necessarily are going to be needed, that making this line item cover both of them would be a way of accounting for unknown funds.
Possibly.
And the only thing I'm saying, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but it's like saving for college, right? If you're going to have to spend $1 million, you know, in total numbers we've got here for MS4, and it may not be that, it may be more, it may be less, but you've got to start making sure you've got a revenue stream, you know, that can start to hit that number. I mean, we do have to pay for it, right?
very much. And so that's, and
Well,
again,
you know, to Emery's point, you know, the water quality is where it's focused at now. And the things that are really critical in the MS4 for the source water is street sweeping, basin cleaning, preventing erosion from properties. And not necessarily, I mean, right now, there is no requirement to actually treat the flow in the stormwater pipe itself.
Yeah, the
Emery, do you agree with that?
I do. I agree with it, but the comprehensive management plan that the Inland Bays have been, the Center for Inland Bays has been working on for almost 2 years is not yet done.
Correct.
At this point, I've been sitting on that panel, and it's probably not going to get approved before fall. If, you know, it's just getting ready to go out for public comment.
And MS4 is waiting on either the result of what comes out of that or the census update.
Exactly.
Which
Yeah.
could put the entire coastal region under it.
Right.
So we're talking about, you know, not having any clarity on MS4 probably till 2022.
I think you're right, Tom.
and so to Earl's point, right now we're charging $5 per resident per month. We're charging $10 per commercial per month and $20 per industrial per month. and we need to take a look at that if that's something, that needs to be put out there. Earl's done a good job of doing just that. So,
And with that, remember when we went with Rehoboth, they had said they had actually met with us because they were trying to figure out how to actually start a stormwater fund, knowing that they don't know what MS4 was going to bring. So we already have that rate established. So to justify, I mean, and we're practicing it. Rehoboth was in they were behind the 8 ball and we were in front of it.
And that goes exactly to my college analogy. You gotta save money now to pay for college later. It will, even those numbers that we have on this chart, they're numbers that aren't covered by the charges that we're putting out now for wastewater treatment, as Darren was talking about.
Well, I assume that the state's going to give us some time once they promulgate these things.
Yes,
Hopefully
yes.
it won't start the next year or so.
I would think the legislature would certainly have planned to have a lead in on this,
And I suspect they'll come up with some money too, hopefully.
That I'm not sure about, but
Yeah, I wouldn't count
I
on
doubt
that.
they'll come up with money. I
Yeah.
know in Dover, we never got a penny for it.
Is that
And
right?
that was part of the reason that Dover got so far behind, because everything was, attempting to be done without increasing any staff, without increasing any budget lines. And I mean, it's something that, I think definitely, whether it's on the board or the city or jointly, there probably needs to be an environmental scientist that would be working on these things and keeping track of it. A lot of it is record keeping. It just takes up a lot of staff time.
What kind of money did you run into?
Well, in Dover, we ended up with a massive fine because we got so far behind on it. But Dover ended up having to hire a full-time staff person and operationally change a number of their programs.
right. I think there'll be heavy lobbying on this on the part of the county as well.
Yeah.
In terms of making sure that they're part of it as well.
That making sure that whatever gets done is not too onerous for the county.
I mean, I agree with where Earl's going. I have no idea what number to put in there or what we should be putting away.
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, I mean, do we up our present fee $1 or $5 or, that's the tough thing.
How much do we generate a year currently, Darren?
I can't quote it. We'll look at that and see. We'll have to take a very
I just put out the
I
September.
think that would be an interesting number to look at, and how do you spend it?
Well, you saw what we're doing at Town Village. We're spending what we've got now. We've got enough work on pipes, cleaning pipes, lining pipes, replacing catch basins that is being used. Earl, did you have it in front of you?
No, I'm just saying that if I look at stormwater in September, and again, I just pulled out one of our things. The operating revenues were for the year to date were like 96,000. The expenses look more like 116,000. And that's before you start adding on some of these other layers. So all I'm saying is we just need to be mindful of what's going to hit us in the future and try to manage it now to the best degree that we can.
And I'll tell you, I know everybody, I won't say the name, although it's on, I know who I'm talking about. I always want to say, I want credit for my storm barrel that I have under my spout. Well, I'll give you credit because what really costs is $10 and it's a greater good of all, just because you don't have a storm grate in front of your home. This is for the greater good of the community. And it's we definitely gonna have to look at that, and that's exactly how it's gonna have to go going forward.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation, is that we consider moving it up $1 or $2, looking at what our expenditures are.
Okay.
Anything else on stormwater?
No.
All right, with that, let's look at the electric. I've got a couple of them here. Industrial battery and AMI installation. let me get to my PowerPoint real quick. And we're looking at industrial battery. We're looking at putting something down at the power plant. We have currently an engineering firm, Sargent Lundy. They've done their study and they've come back with a proposal that they would take and be our representative, just like GMB does for us for the water, et cetera, that they would go out to bid. They would assess a battery company. We would look at putting a 7 to 8 megawatt battery in, and that it would help us. These are a look at some of them that have been out in the deserts, et cetera. We would only have a probably equivalent to about 2 to 3 of these. And I would anticipate putting them inside our power plant, the old generator building. This is probably a 20 megawatt facility here. We're looking around 7 to 8 is what I would recommend that we move forward with. Part of the Sargent Lundy taking and running with that would be that they would, again, they would go out, help us go out to bid, help us select, help us get the contract with them, and help it get installed. And that's what those two $50,000, $50,000 for the remainder of this year and $50,000 for next year. And that would move that forward. I recommend that we would not own the battery, so that if there's issues that would go forward. Tom Panetta, you'd asked the question of, would it be better if we did own it? And I just don't think that we have the expertise or the real ability to do that. I think it would be safer for us to have someone else own it, operate it. We share it.
Similar to what we were originally going to do. Is that
Yes.
what you're thinking?
Yes, that's what I believe would be the best bet. And then with AMI, automatic meter reading. And so we talk about there's some people out there that would like to have us to have the smart meters, where the meters at the home, you're able to read them on a 15-minute interval. That information gets moved back through a network. We would have our own repeaters out in the field. It would bring it back to a central computer at headquarters, and that would help us with billing. But they're also able to take and look at that. You have to have a computer system that is able to collect all that information, keep it available, keep it up to date, so that people at home can then reach in, grab that information, and use it for their needs. When we talk about AMI, it's kind of tough because there's smart meters and there's really smart meters. And there's some really dumb smart meters. And so it depends on what level of service you want to give as to what that system would be. There's some of them where you have a concentrator. And this is a type that we have been, Press gave us the direction that we make sure that the meters we're putting in now could be converted to that system. And they can. But again, what level of smart you can control that, depending on what your customers want. What do they want and what do you want to put in? It can help you. Tom Panetta has brought up that when we have more granular information, we know what our circuits are doing and will help us in the future as we get electric vehicles, etc. Here is a water meter that's a smart meter. Again, this one can report regularly, those 15-minute intervals. It can help you with leak detection. There are some that are smarter than others. There's actually some that you can take and turn on, turn off remotely. Those are fairly expensive, and we don't need a lot of those because most of our customers are very good at paying their bills. Here is a smart electric meter from PG&E. But this is an example. You can't hardly tell what's a smart one, what isn't. It's all in the circuitry behind them. And so with that, we've got discussion on how we would move forward. One of the things I would like you to consider is that I would like to pull the trigger on moving forward with the battery. So as we look here at the electric, we've got the battery, the AMI. We've got down here that we're going to look at also doing a solar field. I would like us to consider looking at doing a battery, that battery put into place. I believe if we have the contract done correctly, that someone else owns the power and that we simply share the savings that that battery brings, and that we are a partner with them. I think we can get into that for about that 100,000. And then we share that, and then we look at doing a solar field. That way that the solar field, that renewable, will not affect our capacity charges, that we're able to manage that it's a smooth transition, and we'll get the best of both worlds. So that's my recommendation.
So I still have a concern on the battery, in as much as if the real one of the things we're trying to get here is peak shaving. And I don't know that I've seen numbers that say what size battery we really need to get the peak congestion charge savings that we need to justify the cost of the battery.
Won't Sergeant Lundy evaluate that for us, Tom?
Well, part of it is DMAC. Darren and I have had discussions with DMAC relative to them being willing to, because right now, remember, congestion peak charges are community spread over all the DMAC utilities. And they've said that since we're sitting at the end of the line, they're willing to consider, if we put in something to shave it, that we would get more of the savings. But that is still amorphous. There's no numbers associated with it. And just so that everyone remembers, 1/3 of our electric charges from DMAC are congestion peak charges. So it's a very, very large number that we're talking about. So I think we need to hammer out with DMAC how much we're going to get for how much savings. And from DMAC's perspective, how much savings, how much we need to shave to be meaningful on reducing, because they don't control the peak congestion charges. That is done by, the transmission company and the generation side.
And what Tom has just laid out is very true. And I've had discussion with Pat McCullough of DMEC, and he's giving me some information, but it's absolutely confidential. And we could have that a little more discussion in confidentiality. I'd rather have it with Pat, but it's valuable information that goes right to Tom's point.
Great. Okay.
Because I'm totally in favor of the battery. I just don't know whether we're talking about a 7 megawatt, 2-hour battery, or whether it's a 15 megawatt, 2-hour battery. Because it's energy and power. Both of them have to go hand in hand.
Yes.
Well, can we kind of agree with it in concept? To say
Yeah,
that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right.
And I will probably set up a meeting with probably Tom Panetta and anybody else you would like to do that with Pat McCullough and Sergeant Lundy. And we'll see if we can get that moving forward as quick as we can, at least to a satisfactory next step. Would that
Great.
be all right?
That's fine. Okay.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Okay.
On the battery, I'm supporting moving forward with the battery properly sized. I think there's a lot of benefit there, a number of fronts. But before we move off this too quickly, the AMI issue, I think we need to discuss that further because my understanding of the Sergeant Lundy report was that they would help do a cost-benefit analysis. Is this really something that we need to install, and in what the level? I got to tell you, I've asked several of my neighbors and friends about, in concept, are they interested in being able to know when they're consuming, what they're consuming, controlling what they're using. And that's just complexity that they don't want. And at this point, I don't know whether it's something that we need to go full bore on and install all the bells and whistles now or monitor it and go out a little farther before we get serious about it. But before we do any of that, I really want to have a study that Sergeant Lundy said they'd be willing to provide, or some other consultant to quantify spending more than $2 million on hardware and software to install something like this.
I'm not sure that this is, I mean, I tend to agree with you. Individuals aren't going to, this isn't, we're not in the Silicon Valley where people are going to go in there and be geeks about that. However, this is more about us and then being able to set rate structures in the future that would be time of day and also allow for us to develop rate structures that if a customer was willing to put in a Nest thermostat, for example, so that during peaks, we could turn the thermostat up 2 degrees or down 2 degrees, or hot water heaters that were smart and tied into it that would allow us to put together rate structures that would accommodate that. So it's not about expecting, in my mind, the customer to use the data, although it'll be available to them. It's really about us being able to better control our distribution system.
Well, Tom, I understand exactly what you're saying. Delmarva Power and Light Company, when it was formerly called Delmarva Power and Light back in the mid 70s, early 80s, had what they called a rip control proposal that would do just what you said, that would allow the utility to involuntary load control with the ripple technology, controlling hot water heaters, air conditioning, and heating, which sounded great. I was briefed on it. I thought it was a good concept, but the customers hated it and they backed away from it.
And I agree with you. I had it in my house because Pico had it back in the 90s, but it was the technology has moved on so much because it was a blunt instrument back then. It was, they turned off your dryer and they turned off your hot water heater.
It was a rolling blackout on selected appliances for a limited period of time. They said 15 minutes max, and the customers wouldn't notice the change in ambient air temperature during that time or the using up of hot water. And then it would move on to the next section of the service territory.
Right.
So.
And nowadays, you know, we have a lot more granularity with it because we can turn a thermostat up by 2 degrees in the summer. And that is much different than turning the air conditioning off for a period of time.
I think getting more information about the technology and the cost of it is a good thing to do. But there are going to be trade-offs, right? With all the things we have in the projects, are rusty pipes more important than that, as an example? And I think that, you know, what we're going through is very good, but then we've got to get into more of a decision process once we have more granular information. And there is going to be puts and takes in what can get done and what it needs to be done by, and what's important to our customers. That's just my
I'm the least knowledgeable in this, but I know going to the APPA conferences, this is where the industry is going from what they keep preaching at these conferences and what the customer is going to be asking for going forward. That's just what I keep hearing at the conferences one after the other. But I agree with Robert. You know, let's get an intelligent evaluation of this and find out how it's really going to work for us. So I have no problem.
And just one more item. You know, we've been talking about air conditioning and heating. The real issue that is coming in the future is electric vehicles. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that is going to really reshape our distribution system. And being able to control when the customers are, you know, automatically control when the customer's charger turns on and off, so that it's not loading during 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a 100-degree day, is going to be critical, both from the peak congestion and from our pole transformers. Our system is not designed for those type of point loads.
So just to add to that, so Darren and I, through the conversations with Pat and Kimberly, we also had thrown out the idea of having AMP give us some sort of quote and or cost benefit analysis. And AMP is the partnership that they have through DMEC. Milford and Seaford have taken advantage of it. And I did ask on that call if they have quantified savings in any sort since it's been implemented for about a year or so. And they're getting to the point where they can quantify the savings and you know, be able to identify them, but they haven't gotten to that point yet.
And AMP ran a very good distributed energy seminar in the last month or two.
So we are in discussions, or we will be in discussions with them, and we'll, you know, provide them a package of data and information for them to put something together for us. And we did mention that, you know, we do need to see some sort of, not just a cost benefit analysis of really a good presentation on what it's going to provide us.
And we probably, so we go back to that Sargent and Lundy study, their assumptions were that we would have 50% of our vehicles becoming electric. And I think they said that our system really was pretty sound, even for the next 10 years. And so I think we can take some time to really do that analysis, perhaps waiting a little bit to get the information from Seaford and Milford, how they're doing with their AMI. But I also think it would be very beneficial to have Pat and possibly Kimberly come down, and it would be a confidential, because again, that information that Pat has shared with us is confidential and benefits us that it's confidential. And we could have this kind of a discussion as to both the industrial battery and the AMI with him. So if it's okay with the board, I will try and set that up.
Yeah, and I'm not proposing that there's any urgency of replacing all the meters, but as meters get replaced, the incremental cost of the AMI meter over the existing meters is not that significant. And so I don't see why we would put dumb meters in when we're replacing meters.
I think that's what we're currently doing, aren't we? Aren't we replacing
Yes.
dumb meters with smarter meters?
Yes, we're able to, again, it's that backbone. We would be able to we'd be able to put it into that backbone, which would give that 15-minute interval reporting is what it would do.
And the tough part is on the water. That's really the harder portion of this. The electric is much easier. The water, it becomes a little bit more intricate.
Very much.
Well, and I think really the AMI really is more beneficial to the utility and on the electric side than the water. The water is more, I mean, we don't have the same capacity issues that Tom was alluding to on water as we do certainly on electricity. And that's more of, you know, are you detecting leaks and main and breaks and things like that.
You hit it right on the head.
Yep.
Okay.
Could we move down the list to the next one, the electric vehicle charging stations? What's all that about?
That, again, kind of a placeholder. We've heard from, like Tom just said, the industry is saying that we're going to be swamped with electric. Wanted to have that. This is another one of those. This is a placeholder. Are we going to be installing public meters to encourage electric vehicles? I don't know. Is that a number that I should take out of there?
Well, I guess I just have an observation. I ride by Wawa frequently, and I see very infrequent use of the Tesla charging stations out there. I don't know what the data is on the usage of the two charging stations that we have. I never really see them in use. I would think that the majority of electric charging is going to be done at home with the car owners plugging into their service that's being provided to their home. And I just didn't know where we would put them if we put in charging stations throughout the town, and would they be free charging stations, or would we start to collect for the cost of the return on the station as well as the electricity? I just needed more information on that.
One of the other ideas is that we were looking at if we were to support the community. So if the city said, yes, we want to have, we want to support Be Green and have charging stations, they would have to commit a parking spot, perhaps down on 2nd Street or, downtown, where we could put that station. That was sort of the impetus for me putting those dollar amounts in there.
And I guess we can grow into that, right? As the demand increases, just we start adding them. And I guess what you put in there is just placeholders, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Right.
If you're comfortable, I'll take them out, but that's what it's for.
Well, with all the talk about it, and Sergeant Lundy, I've been very interested in them over the years, and it seems that's the way we're going. And like I know Tesla's putting a lot more in on their own, and they're starting to charge for them. But the more and more restrictions on future manufacturing of cars, I'm not up to speed on it, but I know that I think the United States has some long range plan for requiring all electric. I know Biden's been talking about it, but going forward. So I think we ought to leave the placeholders in there for now and just grow into it as the demand increases.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see what the data is on the Schley. I have noticed in the last couple of months, because I walk Schley all the time, that there's actually been more cars there than there were historically. And specifically at the Tesla station.
The blue Tesla that goes there to get charged regularly?
There's a silver one also.
Yeah.
So I've seen more there than in the past.
I think the same thing's true over by the Beacon Motel.
Are you seeing more there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you collecting data on the consumption in those spots?
Yes.
That would be helpful. I think as the range of the charging gets better, we'll see more of it.
And I think there is going to be a need for some in the business district, because while most people charge at home, they're out of towners, people who are traveling are going to need to top off.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, then
Anything else,
I'll
Aaron?
leave that in.
Do you have anything else? Is that?
I don't have anything else on the electric. Any other comments or thoughts? All right, then I'll move down to support.
Wait a minute, back up a minute, Dan. The building improvements on Schley, $45,000 next fiscal year. Listening to the city's presentation and our own discussions about staffing increases, what is the staffing impact of these latest additions to both the city and the anticipated BPW staffing due to the administrative offices, space requirements, and with the is there a projected need for additional administrative space for the BPW that could incorporate some or all that $45,000 and make it more spread among not only admin, but also operational staff needs?
There's kind of two lines that you've got to look at. Number one, in the electric, I've got that 45,000. That 45,000 is for our existing buildings and what I've got some roofs that I need to make sure are up and working. I've got some structures such as that one that's over the fuel tanks that were a little questionable. We've got some work that we need to do. So we've got some maintenance items just on Schley itself in general that 45,000 is for. The item that we're talking about down here is what I call support Schley Avenue building. And I had a discussion with the mayor a couple of weeks ago, Mayor, where we said the city has added 3 or 4 new positions. They've moved staff upstairs and taken over some of our upstairs building. And the city continues to grow and add more staff. And at what point in time are we going to be squished where we're going to be adding. We're going to be going out to, we're currently seeking for a new finance officer and a new administrative assistant here shortly. And with that, we're going to need more room. Pretty soon, we're going to come at loggerheads of where we're going to go. We won't be able to fit in the same building. So I have put in here, this is in support, that in the year 25, 26, we're looking at engineering / architectural work. And then I've put down here either a loan or putting in maybe 1.5 million into a new building down on Schley. And so, Mayor, if you remember that discussion, I think we said about 5 years is what you anticipated we would be moving.
Oh, I think it's every bit of 5 years out. I don't see it happening any sooner than that.
Okay, so if we did,
Can I just add something to that, Darren? I mean, one of the things that council's talked about is with additional staff growth on the city side, is that what we may do is move all of our public meetings over to the Rollins Center and
Right.
expand office space on that first floor. So I think we're definitely looking more than 5 years out before I guess it would have to do more with what your space needs are with added staffing.
and that's just it. Both of us kind of growing. We come to that loggerhead, and so that's where I've gotten dollars in here, and I can either put it. So I can either put it. So engineering wise, architectural wise, I've got that dollar amount in the year 25, 26.
Yeah.
We need to look at, and then we can determine where we're going from there. And
Well, we also don't know what's going to happen with, I mean, look what's going on with the pandemic. A lot of people are working from home. And we may not need the exact same office space. Some people may be working out of their houses or out of a home office rather than coming to a physical structure.
Well, those big numbers are out 7 years or so anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. It
So
would be, I mean, you leave them there as just a placeholder.
I think it's prudent to have them in there, but
Yeah, right.
Darren, if we can go back up, just a minor nit on X72, I think you're missing a summation.
gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Earl just got kicked out.
Good. I don't like him anyway.
he didn't pay his bill. He shut his power off.
Hey, Austin, can you check and see if what we've got to do to get him in?
All you gotta do is click on the same link to come back in. I mean, it's off the agenda too.
Would you mind calling him?
Here, I'll send him the,
I think he's trying to restart right now. I suggest we take a 3-minute break while he's trying to get back in.
Okay, we have a public hearing at 6:30
Okay,
on Dutchman's Harvest, just so you have some idea of where we're going.
hey Darren, I just sent him the link.
okay.
Aaron, do we have anything more for Charlie and his gang? Should we let him go?
Not that I know of, no. Charlie, Vince, Josh, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye.
Darren, when we were, and when we're finished with going through, and I think we're virtually finished now, I'd like to hear an assessment, concluding assessment from you that if the capital budget remains pretty much the way you presented it, what the impact is in your feelings for rates and financial feasibility.
Okay.
We're going to have that study done. We already approved that. Wouldn't that be part of that?
I have, so that's kind of two pieces. Number one, I'd like to wait for Earl, but
Yeah.
we need to have you give me decisions on if this looks good, is this what we want to present? I need to give the 5-year capital budget to UFS so they can finish their determination. But I will show you that I have, for my determination, I believe that this will allow us to go forward without a rate increase and be able to, and
Well, I think your idea of doing all these sampling, going back to the water facilities, I think is excellent. I think it's a great, so we're not going blind anymore about which pipes need to be replaced. I think it's great, but I think once we get that information in, I guess this maybe a year from now, we still have to, I think we still should evaluate what the situation is at that point. And it doesn't, based on that map that you started with the places that have rusty water, it doesn't look like it's as big a problem as I envision. I mean, if that's a true representation of what the issue is. So I think we could do your suggestion, but I think we wait until next year, really go with what we have now, what you're suggesting, then next year reevaluate. And if the system is only as bad as you're suggesting, then we just drag it out for 10 years or whatever it takes. If the system is worse than that, then I think we should seriously look at speeding it up and seeing what it, I mean, our rates are very competitive. You did an evaluation here recently. We didn't get a chance to go through it right now, but I think our rates are fairly competitive. And if it, well, we'd want to talk to our ratepayers, but I would think a rate increase of moderate amount to speed up the removal of any remaining iron or lead issues would be warranted if we're still within a reasonable rate schedule. But I think we had to maybe put this off a year, but I think we still have to reevaluate it. So at least in my opinion, what you've come up with, I think is great. And then we'll go back and look at it once we have more information.
Darren, didn't I hear you say that the proposed pipe study could be done sooner, like in a couple of months or something?
We think we can do it. I would put it probably between 4 and 5 months that we could get that done. So yeah, I think we can get that done. What I'd like to do is move forward with Coleman Avenue. I want to move forward, of course, with Pilot Town Road. I want to move forward with the water pipe assessment study. I want to move forward with what we have in the sewer for Pilot Town Road and for the vehicle and for the cedar sewer lining and the manhole lining, just like we have. Earl, are you there?
I am. Can you let me join in? I think I've gotten my system back up here.
All right, there you are.
I think the smart meter cut me off. Thank you.
You're gonna have to say that when you get in. All right, Earl, can you hear us there?
You're muted. Right. Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, you're back in. We can see you.
I think the smart meter cut me off, by the way.
It worked.
Sorry about that, guys.
The sewer, wastewater, the numbers that I have in there now, especially I want to move forward with the electrics, the study. I will go as quickly as I can to have a meeting with DMEC and ourselves and be able to get the information we need from them and then move those forward. So that's what I would request. And if it's all right with you, I will present this the 5-year capital plan to UFS and let them move forward with their rate refreshing agreement that we have with them. Does that sound okay with you as the board?
I would just like to raise the question that Tom Panetta broached the last time we started talking about this rate study, and that was whether or not it's smart to have UFS do not only a rate study, but a cost of service study. I mean, we will be,
Where that,
by the time they finish their work, we're going to be close to having 5 years on the under these rates. You know, we don't have to do it.
we're that close to having a full study anyways.
Yeah.
So I would simply say, yes, let's tell them do the full shebang and let's move forward.
Assuming she's not going to take, or UFS isn't going to take a year to do it, it doesn't have to take that long to do
Yeah.
this work.
You got it. You got it. So I will move forward towards a full cost of service analysis. We'll get that information and find out what the differential is.
Okay. Darren, this was really good, really informative.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else?
Any direction you have for me, you as a board, again, I want it, one voice. Is that the right motion forward? I'm doing what you guys want me to do.
Go. Go.
I think you've done a great job of laying everything out and, trying to herd the 5 cats over here is a monumental cause, but I think the way you presented it is a lot for good discussion.
Okay.
And I would echo that as well. And obviously it wasn't on the last part of it, but I appreciate everything you've done. I think you've done a very good job of putting it together, as Tom said. I think when we get down to math, things do get more complicated. The one thing that I would talk about is when you look at, the county's payments to us, we probably have that in the plan in perpetuity. And from an accounting standpoint, I wouldn't suggest that as an example. So I think we need to look at some of the revenue streams, some of the cost, and really, the next meeting actually becomes the hardest one, to be honest with you, is trying to fit all the pieces together.
Got it. And with the mayor here, I think we covered that, that Donovan Smith may be off the dime. Were you aware of that, Mayor?
No, I'm not.
We had a call, Greg Pope and Laura Robbins of the state initiated the call and just wanted it with Ken Burnham and myself yesterday.
Okay.
And they have taken and reduced the requirements for that, in that he doesn't have to do a bond to cover
We knew that. We knew that, but what about
Well,
the easement?
and he's saying that now he doesn't have a problem providing the easement.
Really? Is
So
lenders going to agree to that?
he said on the phone.
That's news to me. I mean, I knew about the bond being eliminated, the need for it to be. Greg had told me
Right.
that before Christmas, and I think you were aware of that before Christmas, but I was not aware about the easement. That was the big sticking point.
You got it. So just wanted to let you know that, and it's at least.
That's very good news.
So the next step is we're going to get with our the state bond counsel, Sylvia Shin of Saul Ewing, our attorney, their attorney, and try and get it all back into moving forward. So
Would you include me in the loop on and Anne Marie on any email exchange regarding this? Because we need to move on the annexation as well.
Sure.
He's already got his he's already requested annexation, but this is actually very good news. Thank you.
Okay. That's all I've got, ladies and
Anybody
gentlemen.
else? Okay.
Great job, Darren.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you all. We'll see you all for the hearing on Dutchman's Harvest in about 14 minutes.
Good
Time
job.
for humanitarian break.
Thank you.
Goodbye.